In less than 2 months, Apple's going to be releasing the entire iPhone 17 lineup, and this year is actually going to be the biggest upgrade in a long time. Today, I want to show you the final designs and colors for all 4 iPhone 17 models, the new features that Apple's been working on, and the exact announcement and release dates that have been rumored. This year especially, there has been so much conflicting information, so I just wanted to compile everything into one video to give you your best look yet at what to expect. So I want to start off with the Pros, then move over to the all-new Air model, and close out with the base iPhone 17, because across the board there are some really interesting details for all of these. First, on the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro Max, this is what the updated design is said to look like, which is a significant departure from what we have currently. In the past, the Pro iPhones have used glass on the front and glass on the back, joined together by a titanium band around the edges. But on this generation, Apple's said to be using a part glass, part aluminum design that completely ditches titanium in favor of this updated aluminum unibody chassis. This means that the majority of the body will be made from a single piece of aluminum without any seams, and the rest is going to have these cutouts for things like the camera, and most striking, this huge MagSafe area at the bottom. At first glance, it honestly looks a little bit strange, but the reason Apple has to have this glass cutout is that wireless charging cannot currently work through aluminum or titanium, and that's why since the very first iPhone that supported wireless charging, we've always had a glass back. And because of this, Apple's making some other interesting changes too. Like, you can't just center the Apple logo on the back of the phone anymore because it would look pretty off. So Apple's actually moving the Apple logo on the phone to be centered within the MagSafe cutout, which has also required for Apple to redesign the MagSafe housing in what appears to be the biggest design change since we first saw MagSafe back in 2020 on the iPhone 12. Instead of being a complete circle of magnets, Apple's removing a few out of the bottom so that when MagSafe is placed above the Apple logo, it doesn't cover it up at all, and it has this nice little cutout where the Apple logo sits in between. Does all of this seem ridiculously over-engineered just to make sure an Apple logo looks good in all contexts? Yeah, but it's likely that this new version of MagSafe will also introduce faster wireless charging, especially for third-party products. As a new leak says that the iPhone 17 Pros specifically will support Qi 2.2, which adds 25 watts of wireless charging for third-party accessories. Right now, that number is capped at just 15 watts. And I believe that the 17 Pros will finally add reverse wireless charging to the iPhone, where you could share your power with another iPhone by placing it on the back of yours, or power up your AirPods if those were low on battery. Regardless, this cutout is just one of 3 really interesting upgrades on the 17 Pros, as the second is the new all-aluminum camera bar that sits right above it. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the entire camera bump will be made out of raised aluminum, and the only glass component on here will be the lenses themselves. It should make it a lot more durable. And underneath here, Apple's planning something pretty cool, especially with the telephoto zoom lens this year. Just like the wide and ultra-wide lenses, Apple's going to make this a 48 megapixel sensor, which means you'll be able to do a pretty cool sensor crop and get some level of a super zoom on the iPhone, which we've been wanting forever. Notably, with the camera bar being made of aluminum, it's also going to be color matched to the aluminum on the rest of the phone, and the colors for this year are actually interesting. In addition to the same black, white, and gray that we've had, Apple is also adding a new dark blue and dark orange option. And while I was not expecting to like the orange that much, in our renders, I think it looks pretty slick, and that could be the color to go for this year. Now, as for the third interesting change on the 17 Pro, you need to flip it around and look at the very top of the device here. Now, the dynamic island has been rumored to get smaller, and recently there have been a lot of leaks about Apple planning some major user interface changes. But something that I've seen almost nobody talk about yet is that the speakerphone is getting a lot wider this year. It looks like Apple's almost extending the length by about double. As of right now, we don't know why they're doing this, but my guess here is to improve audio quality, which is an area of the iPhone that, unlike everything else, has been pretty stagnant for a long time now. Below that, the rest of the screen on the iPhone 17 Pro is also remaining largely the same. Still 6.3 and 6.9 inches, OLED 120Hz ProMotion, but it does sound like after all that they will be getting a new anti-reflective and scratch-resistant coating. For a second we thought this was canceled, but it sounds like in mass production Apple has figured it out, and the screens will be much more durable than they are currently. Now on the iPhone 17, Apple will also be giving you the latest privacy and security updates, but just leaving this up to Apple unfortunately isn't enough anymore. You'd be shocked to see what you find when you search release your name online, there are so many different websites that have been collecting your data probably without you even knowing and then selling it to third parties, and it's gross and disgusting. And personally, I wanted it to stop, which is why I partnered up with Incogni, who sponsored today's video. See, on your behalf, Incogni does all the hard work of individually reaching out to these websites and telling them to stop using your stuff, because that is your right to ask them to stop using it. And just recently, Incogni added a new custom data removal feature. So if you find a specific website online that is using your stuff, you can send it to Incogni and ask them to take care of it for you. Since I joined Incogni, I have gotten so much less spam, and I cannot thank them enough for giving me a little bit of privacy back online. So take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code AppleTrack at incogni.com/AppleTrack to save 60% off an annual plan. A massive thank you to them for sponsoring this video and keeping me safe online again. Okay, thanks to them, now let's get back to it. One other subtle change on the 17 Pros that a lot of people have glossed over is that the phones are getting just a bit thicker. Not by a lot, but just enough to fit a slightly larger battery inside. And if you want good battery life on the iPhone, we've just gotten one of the best rumors ever. Because the iPhone 17 Pro Max is said to house a 5,000 milliamp hour battery or larger, which is an increase of about 7% or over 300 milliamp hours over the current iPhone 16 Pro Max. I know those numbers might not sound that big year over year, but in terms of a battery, that is going to be a noticeable quality of life improvement, especially because it's not just the battery that's getting larger. Apple is planning a even more efficient A19 Pro chip, and for the first time ever in an iPhone, Apple plans to introduce vapor chamber cooling, which is a much more efficient way to spread and dissipate heat throughout all of your phone, which will make it run cooler in general. Like the updated MagSafe ring, we've also seen the leak component for the vapor chamber, which does seem to confirm it is happening this year. Yeah, who would have thought that just making the iPhone thicker would make the battery life great? Although it's clearly a lesson that Apple hasn't learned for all iPhone 17s, because as we go on next to the iPhone 17 Air, this might be the most fascinating product Apple has ever developed. See, the iPhone 17 Air is going to be Apple's one more thing when they announce the iPhone 17 series this year. At its thinnest point, this phone is said to be just 5.5 millimeters, which holding it in your hand is pretty wild to imagine how an entire smartphone will fit on the inside. Because as it turns out, it is really hard to fit an entire smartphone in just that amount of space. The screen is going to be really large on the front because the Air is replacing the plus-sized iPhone. It's going to measure in at 6.6 inches via OLED and 120 Hz. And the colors are going to be pretty cool too. Apple's really leaning into the Air aesthetic, so you're going to get light blue, light gold, in addition to a black and white and gray color scheme. But aside from that stuff, pretty much everything else is going to be a compromise. On the back, which will likely be made of glass, there's going to be a raised camera bar like the Pros, but in this one, there's only one lens, not three. Underneath, you're getting a 48 megapixel sensor, but you're not going to get nearly the shooting range of even the old model that this replaces. On the side, there's no SIM tray because the phone is so thin that there wasn't enough room for Apple to build it in. And in every market around the world, even in China, it's going to be an eSIM only device, which Apple has never tried before. In fact, it's so thin there might not be speakers on the bottom, and the only audio source could be the front earpiece at the very top. Internally, it will have Apple's latest A19 Pro chip, but it's not going to have the same GPU as the Pro models. It's just going to have 5 GPU cores, or one less than the Pros, in a sly effort for Apple to cut costs here. Even the 5G speeds won't be as fast as the Pros. With Apple opting to use their in-house C1 modem, it doesn't support the ultra-wideband connectivity, which limits you to the sub-6 GHz spectrum, which is not as fast. Honestly though, I think Apple could get away with all of that if they just gave this phone good battery life, but so many reports now have said that that is not going to be true, and that the 17 Air is going to, at best, have the same battery life as an iPhone 12 from 5 years ago. Specifically, Apple's own internal studies found that just 60 to 70% of users could get through a day without charging. That's in comparison to the 80 to 90% they target for other iPhone units. So in knowing this, Apple started work on a solution, which we're hearing is an external battery case accessory, which will be sold separately in addition to the 17 Air, which I'm telling you right now is not going to go over well. If you're selling a phone day one with a battery accessory, maybe maybe you should have just made it a little bit thicker. I don't know. As we get closer to the launch, I'm hopeful that we hear some better news about the 17 Air, but as the weeks have passed by, a lot of the news has not been super optimistic. Now, finally, there is one last iPhone 17 that we haven't talked about yet. The base model, the cheapest one that you'll be able to buy that will likely cost around $800. Although, unlike all of the other iPhone 17s that are going to look drastically different and employ some big strategy shifts from Apple, this iPhone 17 just kind of feels like more of the same. According to numerous leaks, the design is going to be pretty much one-to-one with the current iPhone 16, meaning it's the same glass and aluminum design language with the dual camera setup on the back. While the Pro and the Air get these transform camera bars, the base 17 does not. It's the same dual cameras placed on top of each other that we had a year ago. However, the phone is getting slightly physically larger, as Apple's planning a new 6.3-inch screen, which is 0.2 inches bigger than the iPhone 16. It's going to be one-to-one now, we're hearing, with the display on the iPhone 16 Pro, which does mean that 120 Hz, even on the cheapest iPhone 17, is confirmed to be happening. Apple is finally adding it after all of these years, and I could not be more excited. Up at the top here, the dynamic island will probably be unchanged, but the front-facing camera is getting increased from 12 to 24 megapixels, which is a change I forgot to mention on all of the iPhone 17s. All of them are getting this new front-facing 24 megapixel camera. Powering all of this on the inside, we will be getting a new A19 chip, but it's not said to be a big jump year over year, and will have fewer GPU and CPU capacity compared to the Pro variant. Funny enough, the biggest change might be in the form of new colors. Apple is going to be adding a gray to this base model for the first time, and they're also adding a new light blue colorway, kind of similar to the light blue on a 17 Air, but a new purple and green colorway will be the flagship colors for 2025, and I do think that's going to attract the attention of a lot of people that are a bit more price conscious looking at this base model, because I do think the price at this point is the only attractive part of this base phone. Keep in mind, we're talking about the same company that released the iPhone 13 and 14 back-to-back, where they essentially looked identical year over year. So would I be shocked if they did it again? No, not really. Okay, knowing all of this, when is Apple specifically releasing these? We know they always come out in September, but now a new rumor has pointed to the event happening the week of September 8th. So it would be either Monday, September 8th, Tuesday, September 9th, or Wednesday, September 10th for the event. And then historically, they should release about a week and a half later. So we would be expecting the entire iPhone 17 series to launch on Friday, September 19th, which, yeah, is under 2 months from right now. I have not been this excited for new iPhones in a long time, and I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new about the iPhone 17 series. If you did, drop a like down below. Seriously helps me and the channel out, and hit subscribe for more on the iPhone 17s, because you know me. There's so many more iPhone 17 videos coming. All right, I love you guys so much. I've been Sam. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.